Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to talk about the books that I read in February of 2024. And I would say that a pretty good reading month was had. I ended up finishing 6 books. So I am still on a slightly slower pace, but I'm okay with that because of the fact that I have been able to get more review videos scripted, planned and scheduled for most of these books. It's been a really big goal of mine this year to actually dedicate time to talk more about the books that I'm reading. And I've had a pretty firm rule that I can't really properly start a new book until I've done a decent amount of scripting for the previous book that I finished. So I'm really putting a halt to my reading, but it's no bad thing. First book that I read in February was The Temple of Fortuna by Elodie Harper. I have a review video of this scheduled for March, I think the 15th or the 14th. But in short, this is the final book in the Wolf Den trilogy, following Amara, who starts the first book as an enslaved sex worker in Pompeii in 74 AD, whereas this book picks up in 79 AD. Amara is, as you would expect, in a very different place to where she was in the first book, and is really having to come to terms with some of the decisions that she made in previous books. All the while there are distant rumblings around her threatening danger, and not just those of the political machinations of those around her. Let's just say there's only so much that human will alone can do when the natural world has other plans. But yes, full thoughts of this to come, but I really enjoyed this. This to me was such a fantastic end to this series and a very easy 5 stars. The next book that I finished in February was Babel by R.F. Kuang, the book that everybody has been talking about over the last 2 years, and I finally got around to reading it as part of a buddy read with Shah over at Thoroughly Enjoyed Books, Aoife at Pretty Purple Polka Dots and Shannon at 155 Books. We originally had the plan that we were going to buddy read this 1 chapter per day during the work days and then 3 chapters in the space of a weekend. And I'd been sticking to that pretty rigidly, and then around about mid-month I completely gave up on that and just raced to the end. I do totally understand why so many people love this, though it's an interesting one because I completely understand why on a fantasy level some people might have issues with it, but it's one that I really want to work out my fuller thoughts on in a proper review video, but more to come on this one. There's more to say. The next book that I read is one that I don't have to show you because I did send it home with my mum, but it was Style and Substance by Bay Garnett, or edited by Bay Garnett. This is a collection of collated essays, extract and original pieces for this book from various people either in the fashion industry, celebrities, or people who just wrote about stylish figures, going from Oscar Wilde to Bernardine Evaristo to Stanley Tucci, just talking about some element of their style and what it means to them. The book is split up into 5 sections: freedom, rules, style, tribes, colour and dressing up. And yeah, basically the essays within this collection all fit into those 5 different categories. This is a really interesting reading experience. Definitely a very fun one as somebody who likes to dress up as I do. Some of these essays were hits, some of them were misses. I talk about this a lot more in a dedicated review video that is coming up, but an interesting one if this is something that would take your fancy. And then the final new to me book that I read this month was Henry VIII, The Heart and the Crown by Alison Weir. The second book in what is going to be the Tudor Roses trilogy by this author. The first book was Elizabeth of York, The Last White Rose. The third one is going to be Mary I, Queen of Sorrows, which I'm very much looking forward to. That's coming out in May. And this is a fictionalization of the life of Henry VIII, going from the death of his mother, Elizabeth of York, up until his own death. You know, for me, this was fairly solid. I always trust that Alison Weir does a lot of research into these figures, that she's always going to make smart decisions when it comes to her depiction, when she has to kind of make choices with a controversial figure. And, you know, Henry VIII is definitely that. This being said, I feel like this didn't have enough pages in it for the story that she probably wanted to tell. Once again, I will have a full review video for this. I think that might be coming out in April at this point. But I feel like some of her other books, particularly her 6 Tudor Queens, each book gave those queens a little bit more time to kind of reflect and ruminate on what was happening to them. Whereas with this book, it felt very episodic, kind of like this happened, then this happened, then this happened, with very little time for Henry to kind of take a breather. And I feel like in order to get that, Alison Weir would have had to have made this book like 150, 200 pages longer. And personally, I'd have enjoyed that very much. And I think this book is just kind of a victim of the fact that there's just so much evidence to wade through. For Henry VIII, we just know so much about what he was doing in comparison to some of his wives or even his mother, of whom, you know, there are some gaps in the narrative that Alison Weir has to fill in somehow. You know, it wasn't my least favourite of her books so far, but kind of on the lower end for me. And as I say, full thoughts to come in a full review video. I had 2 rereads this month, both on the Shakespeare tract, because as I've mentioned previously, I am going to be doing a little Shakespeare project, little Shakespeare video, which will be coming in April, hopefully to tie in with Shakespeare's birthday. But the 2 books I reread for this project were Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, another booktube darling, all about the wife of William Shakespeare, Anne Hathaway, or as she's referred to in this book, Annies, how she came to meet William Shakespeare, their relationship, but then flashing forward to 1596, which sees the death of their son Hamnet and what this grief does to the family. This book gets me more invested every single time I read it. The first time that I read it, it was kind of, you know, like a freestyle. I wasn't quite sure what the hype was about, and then I very very quickly reread it, bumped it up to a 4-star. Now this time reading it, it affects me even more. I honestly think this might be one of my favourite books. So this was a very easy 5-star for me. The other Shakespeare book that I read was King of Shadows by Susan Cooper, a time travel historical fiction which sees modern day, and by modern day I mean 1999, Nat Field somehow being time travelled back to 1599. He himself is a young boy being trained in Shakespeare, and he ends up meeting and performing with Shakespeare in this alternate timeline. We don't know why, we don't know what he's been sent to do, but this is a really fun middle grade to get kids more invested in Shakespeare's London. I wouldn't be surprised if you told me that this was used in classes, because it is very, very descriptive of Shakespeare's world, very much like, you might be wondering why we do this and not that, and here is why. Which, you know, for myself as an adult who has studied Shakespeare, and I know like a fair amount about Shakespeare's London, is unnecessary for me, but you know, I'm not necessarily the target audience. And yeah, I feel like this has definitely improved on a reread for me. I really enjoy the depiction of Shakespeare in here, but more thoughts on this to come in that video. I had no DNFs this month, which always very happy about. Currently I'm in the middle of 2 books which are very pertinent for History-a-thon, which is really the goal for my reading this month, is to read around History-a-thon, Women's History Month. The first of those being Normal Women by Philippa Gregory, 900 Years of Making History. This is a British history looking at the regular women, not the royals, not the nobles, but all of the other women who don't really get their due in the historical record. However, completely turning that on its head, we have The Tower by Flora Carr. This is fiction looking at the life of Mary Queen of Scots, but particularly her escape from Scotland to England and the maids who accompanied her. I'm only a few pages into this, but it's really evocative writing so far. I'm quite intrigued. The last fiction book that I read that focused on Mary Queen of Scots was Rizzio, and this is a really great follow-up because it's not too long after that book that the events of this are taking place. So yeah, more thoughts on this hopefully soon. I've decided starting now that I am going to bring wrap-ups back, so I'm talking a little bit more about the books that I'm reading, though still giving myself the space to do full book reviews. And also because I know that a lot of people really liked the roundup format that I did, I'm going to be doing that format seasonally, where I am talking about like my genre breakdown, my star rating breakdown, where my TBR is at, but I'll be doing that once a season. So the next roundup will be at the end of March, beginning of April, and then wrap-ups every month. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I've spoken about today. Alternatively, please let me know anything that you really enjoyed reading in February 2024. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.